owning a house. It's a goal, it's a dream, but sometimes people feel as if it's a requirement. There is no requirement in life to own a home. Owning a house is a financial decision, a long-term financial decision. It's an asset allocation, and it creates a certain lifestyle. There is a psychological effect to owning a house. It's what they call pride of ownership. You feel more in control, and to a certain extent you are. You don't have a landlord. You do have a community, whether you have an HOA, whether you just have property taxes, whether you just have neighbors. You are never completely free in anything in this world. So, you have to kind of get around that psychologically. So what you kind of get to is a point where you have to decide, do you want to own or do you want to rent? That's most people's decision. There are some unique circumstances where people live full-time on the road, such as myself, but I have owned. And so I want to speak on that as I think about the option to buying property again. And is it really worth it for me? Well, there's two factors initially that you always have to look at. Number one is you have to look at, can you afford it? Because if you can't afford it, it's not worth it, because it's going to be another burden in your life. And you say, well, I can't afford rents either. It's too high. Well, if you're in poverty in the United States of America and you don't have assets and you don't make enough money, then you'll get subsidized housing. I have family members that are on it, so obviously that's not great housing, that's survival housing. But if you manage your life, you should be able to get into some type of decent rental and then work to get ahead, and then you figure out if you want to buy eventually. Many people do that. And there's nothing wrong, though, with renting your entire life, because the other aspect of that is, do you want to have a family, or do you have a family? Do you have pets? Do you want to stay in an area long term? Are you committed to that area? Or are you young? Are you still kind of figuring out life? Maybe you haven't figured out if you want a family. Maybe you haven't figured out where you want to live. So if there's a lot of variables in your life, I don't know if you want to start to put down roots. If you're on the verge of having your first child and you probably want to have another, if you see yourself with pets and coming back to the same area every time, then home ownership is probably going to be a goal that makes sense for you, because you're creating a lifestyle. When you decide to have a family, or when you add to your family, or when you don't want to do a lot of moving, and you have the means financially, then it makes sense to create a lifestyle where you're invested financially, emotionally in this one area long term. So it may make sense to look at the option to buy. So financially speaking, it's only worth it if you can afford it and you're going to be in that area for a long period of time. However, even with those two criteria met, it is not a requirement. It is not a requirement. It's not a requirement to own a home. So the counter argument is it doesn't make sense to rent because it's throwing money away. Well, remember, you don't make money on a house until you sell it. So even if you build up equity, until you sell it, you don't make a dime. And then when you sell it, what are you going to do next? So you're going to buy another house and you can put that money back into that another house? Or are you going to rent and just cash out? Most people never get to that end game. Again, most people leave their property to their children. So again, if you're going to have a family and if you want to leave something to your children, it may make sense. But most children who inherit property end up selling it. So it's just, it eventually ends up liquidated, because usually your children want to create a different life in a different area, in a different house. They want to create their own life, their own memories. So there is no exact science to life. The science meaning data, collecting it, studying it, and forming a conclusion. The science of home ownership is, in general terms, if you can afford it, if you're going to be in an area for more than 7 years, and if you want the lifestyle of owning versus renting, financially speaking, it will make sense. If you're in the area for 10 years, if you buy a house within your means, statistically, probably going to make sense. But you have to be disciplined not to over-renovate, not to overpay, etc. Renting makes sense scientifically if you're going to not be in an area for more than 2 years. You are not in a position where you need a lot of liability or maintenance. You're going to be traveling a lot. You're not really settled in, and maybe you're single with no pets, no kids. You just need to pay for temporary shelter for a couple years or whatever it may be to get you to your next stage. So obviously, everyone is different with unique circumstances. Emotionally, we all, I think, always want to be in total control. However, with control comes liability and responsibility. Thus, there is something alluring about the rental option where maybe you're not 100% in control of the property, but you're also not liable, responsible to a certain extent. Mainly that's the homeowner. So, I have those mixed emotions because I'm human. I've owned a house. I know it's liability, responsibility. I also know that it can provide a level of comfort and security and peace and pride of ownership and equity over time. I owned a house for 15 years. For the first 5 years, it kind of, it was up in value a little bit. Then I owned my house during 2007 and 2008 when the United States of America had a financial recession. And my home went under water. If I sold my house, I would have had to pay $50,000, $75,000 just to get out of it. So I had to wait another 5 years just for the property to pretty much get back to even. So, again, only because I owned my house for 15 years that I was able to ride through that. But if I had bought my house and then had to sell it 5 years later, I would have got caught in the bottom of the pit. So that's what you have to think of. That's the experience that I've been through, not theory, experience. A lot of times, people who are young have just experienced the past 10 years where houses have gone up. Now they're at peak, and they may continue to go up. I don't know the future. But I know this, that owning is not a requirement. It's a financial decision and somewhat an emotional decision based on a variety of factors. I don't believe you should buy if it's going to be short term. I don't believe you should buy if you really don't like where you're going to live, but there's exceptions. If you got a family, if you got requirements in that area for whatever reason, whatever your personal individual circumstance. But if you're single with no pets, no kids, you have a lot of luxury. So I always tell my single people who get depressed that don't have all these different things that they may want, a family, a lover, a dog. Don't forget, there's a lot of luxury in being single. And luxury simply means that you have not just what you need. You can do a lot of what you want when you're single. You can do a lot of what you want when you're single. Luxury is wants. Okay. When you have a lot of responsibilities, you got to do what you need to do. Okay. And that's, family, pets, lovers, etc. So I hope this message helps you as we are in the peak, possibly, of a certain cycle of real estate. Maybe not. Maybe it keeps going up, but maybe psychologically you step back and you say, look, even if we are at a peak, this house is below my means. I'm going to commit to this area for the long-term foreseeable future. I want to own psychologically and equity-wise. It makes sense for me, whether you're single, family, whatever. And maybe you say, I'm just not ready or whatever, and I'm willing to rent. I'm willing to not have equity, but not have responsibility. You have the freedom to understand that owning is not a requirement. And so be at peace, even though I know it's not easy, because when we don't own, we don't feel like we're in control. But you are in control of your day, because remember, whether you live or whether you rent by the beach, you're still by the beach. Remember, whether you're in a hotel or a car, you get to determine, what do you want to do next? You want to go to the gym? You want to go to the ocean? Do you want to go for a walk? What do you want to do? How do you manage your day? If you're lethargic and you just sleep all day, doesn't matter if you own or rent, you're just going to sleep. Now, if you're going to sleep for 10 years, then might as well own, get some equity. But I think you know what I mean. Hopefully my videos help. If they do, click the thumbs up. You want to support the channel, click that blue join button. Check out my playlist, thousands of free videos. Thank you for watching. Remember, keep showing up, do the best you can, and even if you do something imperfect, and many times it's better than trying to do something perfect, because showing up, being reliable, giving people something, content, your time, whatever, has value. And that's worth it to show up, okay? Give your value, get value. Peace.